Good afternoon. I thought I'd take some time on this lovely southern afternoon on my front porch here in Southern Oregon to talk to you about what I learned in this class. The number one thing I learned in this class that I'm going to take away is the skill of active listening. And active listening basically boils down to the concept of not listening with a filter, whether that's bias, whether that's pride, whether that's arrogance, whatever it is, you're sitting down with someone and you're hearing them out. You're not coming up with their solutions. You're not coming up with their problems as you're listening. You're just hearing them out. And Tyler, the pastor I interviewed, good friend of mine, he models this for me. And he's shown me the value of whenever I've come to him with a problem or situation, he hears me out and he says, okay, if I was in your shoes, this is what I would do, but you need to go home and you need to pray about this and you need to think about this because you got the skills and you have the abilities to solve this problem. And I'll be here if you fail, whether you succeed. So I almost see him as a leader that leads with a hand out, pushing you forward, pushing you to dig within you and develop the skills that God has given you, but always being there if you fall back to catch you, to pick you up and carry you through the situation. So a little bit about Tyler. He is the son of the pastor, and I say that he doesn't use that in a prideful way. I say that to lead into the next 2 points, and that's growing up in the church and volunteering and years of leadership within and outside the church. And so he's had the opportunity to, one, learn from his dad, and second of all, learn from all the other pastors and volunteers in the church and kind of follow in their footsteps of great leaders and just glean from them and learn from them and see examples of how this worked and how this didn't work. And then that also led into him being in various different positions in the church. He also did go to school and get his BA and his master's degree, and now he is the campus pastor at the Redwood campus for the last 3 years. One of the first things I wanted to ask Tyler, because this is a question that really impacted me, and that is, what did you learn from having good leaders in your life? First point is teamwork. And this is one thing that the pastors really do good at River Valley, and this is one thing that Tyler really does well at the Redwood campus, that it's not just the pastor that makes Sunday morning, and it's not just the janitor who takes out the trash on Sunday morning that makes the church work. It's everybody working together. Everyone's job is valued. Everyone's position is equal. And this is one thing that he does really good at the Redwood campus, of getting us from the volunteers to those who are on staff to those who are preaching. We all work together and are valued to make Sunday morning work. Second is the value of saying no, and the ability of not overwhelming your schedule, and that leads to the third point, which is time management. These two kind of go hand in hand. You have to learn how to say no to certain people and not meet with certain people, because certain people, and especially some sheep in the flock, can just be draining and drain your time for more important things. And so you have to learn how to say no and manage your time. The fourth point, how to empower other leaders and delegate to other leaders. Like I said before, Tyler's really good at the handout leadership that I call, being there to push you into deeper waters, to grow in areas, grow in your weaknesses and work on your strengths, but also be there to catch you when you fall. Also receives critique with humility. Tyler, no matter whether it's a senior pastor, whether it's a volunteer, I have seen him handle critique with humility and say, okay, I understand where you come from. I respect that. This is where I was coming from. And he changes. He actually will change the behavior if it needs to be changed, or he'll respond respectfully and caring for the person and understand that the person is just coming from their own bias and their own position, and he doesn't let it affect him, and he responds respectfully and encouraging to the person who's critiquing him. The second question I want to ask Tyler, what did you learn from having bad leaders in your life? So it's not just good enough to have good leaders in your life, but what does it mean to have bad leaders in your life? How does that impact your leadership? Reminder to watch my own arrogance and pride. That seems to be a common struggle for those who say are bad leaders. So bad leaders have arrogance and pride, and so it gives you a mirror almost. And he said this to me: bad leaders almost give you a mirror of what could be inside you. And so having that ability to watch and say, okay, that person's leading in pride and arrogance and not leading in humility, and so I need to make sure that I'm being humble before God so I can be humble before those I am over. Second point would be pacing myself. Kind of like the last 2 points, time management, and it's kind of like that time management thing. Pacing yourself, not getting overwhelmed, being able to say no when you need to say no, so you don't get burned out. A lot of times bad leaders are just burned out and they don't know when to quit. And so knowing that time to step back and let others step into that position is important. Watch my hospitality as in having hearts for others. A lot of bad leaders turn inward and they're focused on themselves and they're focused on their position and they're focused on their power. And good leaders focus on lifting others up and encouraging. And so bad leaders are just a good mirror to say, okay, what do I need to work on? And what do I need to watch my own heart, watch my own self so I don't have these things in my leadership. Third, what do you believe motivates people the best? So how do you motivate people? And Tyler's big point, as you can see in all these, is vision. So vision is the thing that motivates people. You can't motivate people by guilt, fear, flattery. You have to motivate people by what could be or what will be. This will incite people for the winning and not losing. This gets people excited. Okay, this is what we could be as a church, and this is where we could be as a leadership team. This is where your staff could be if you would just do these things. And so Tyler's really good at getting a vision built and getting everyone on board with that. So the next question I asked Tyler was, how do you create a vision? Where does a vision come from? If a vision is one of the most important things for a team to have, then where does that vision come from? And intentional times of prayer for God's guidance for the vision itself. So the vision has to come from God. And when he was saying this kind of brought me back to what I said earlier about the active listening. We need to be actively listening not just to people but also to God. What does God want us to do? What does God want us to say? What does God want us to do with our life? And so we need to be actively seeking God for a vision for the team that we're over or the position that we're in, but also personally for our own life. And then second, reflect on where we are in the community and what would be actively benefit for the people we are trying to reach and make it relevant. Again, making people the center. It's not about making myself look good so the other pastors give me praise and I get this standing ovation at the next staff meeting. But what does my church need? What do the people in my position need from me? What are they calling for? Thirdly, figure out what actually is feasible both financially and with the volunteers you have. Again, like I said, we are a Redwood campus, so we are a smaller campus of the bigger campus. And so I have seen this modeled out over the last 3 years that Tyler's been our pastor of. This is what we could be as a church, and this is where I want to go with the vision of the church, and these are the baby steps of how to get there. A lot of times as leaders, we can put the cart before the horse, so to speak, and we can focus people so much on what we could be that we forget to carry people through the vision to that. And so we need to keep that in mind, that we may not be financially ready, we may not have the right people for it, but if we slowly take the steps with the volunteers that we have, we'll eventually get to that what could be moment. So how do we value these workers? And so now we know what we need to create a team. We need a vision. So what do we do with the workers? How do we value workers and volunteers? First, intentionally. So this is writing thank you notes, having conversations with them face to face, encouraging them at every moment you can, and praying for them one-on-one and separately in your own quiet time. Honor them by name from the pulpit. So just giving them recognition and praise and giving them kind of that ownership of their positions. What are the characteristics of good team working together? So now we know how to value a team player, but now how do we get that team player to work well with others? The first point Tyler had was a solid team must trust each other, and so you must build that. If the leader is individually respecting those workers or those volunteers in a team, then they're going to reciprocate that with each other, and that ultimately respect will each recircle trust within each other. Second, communicate effectively and proactively. So be communicating clearly with those in your team. And if you're doing that individually with each team member, then they're going to do that with each other, and it's going to create this communication thing. And so anytime something doesn't happen, they're going to communicate with each other well and effectively. Give and receive critique without offense. And members that specialize in different areas thrive in their giftings and callings. So if you are individually critiquing people well and respectively, they're going to do that with each other. And then secondly, putting people in the positions that God has called them to do, and not putting them in different positions, but putting them in their areas of strength and encouraging them to grow in their weaknesses. How do you define poor followers and good followers? Good followers are reliable, self-motivated, and team players. Weaker followers need constant guidance and are not very reliable with responsibility. It is important to lead the poor followers with patience, gentleness, instruction, and reproof, but sometimes it's down to putting the right people in the right roles. How do you deal with the conflicts on a team? Get everyone in the same room face to face. So you can't have a situation, you can't deal with a conflict. You can't deal with a conflict amongst a team if you don't get everyone together and deal with it face to face. Don't do it over internet. Don't do it over computer. Do it face to face. What's the biggest struggle for you becoming a leader? It simply comes down to staying, not turning inward on yourself. He was talking about staying that humble, prideful leader, keeping people at the center of your mind, focusing on others, not focusing on yourself. Next question. Do you see any common characteristics, good or bad, amongst upcoming leaders? And again, it kind of has the same thing of this idea of watering down beliefs, not having good management skills, kind of turning on each other, getting more focused on the position and not getting focused on the people, and serving people well with humility and understanding where people are, and kind of going back to what I said earlier about that active listening thing. I think a lot of young leaders are failing at that, and they're just so wrapped up in, oh, I'm a leader and I have this position, I have this power, and I have this authority, and they're not actively seeking and listening the people that are underneath them. So in my overall conclusion of my class and with my interview with Tyler, I boiled it down to these 3 points. Overall, having leaders in your life you can learn from is the most important. People you can learn from, receive critique from, and inspire change in yourself from their example. So the importance of building a good circle of people you can follow around you that lead from good example. In my own life, I have various mentors that influence my life and who I have become today. Their impact is my emotional and spiritual growth have been crucial by becoming a leader both within my family and in the world. A theme I received throughout the interview was the theme of self-adjustment. Pastor Tyler Finley handed to motivation aspects of being humble and being able to change because of what is right, not necessarily what you want. Seeing yourself as who you really are, and be confident in changing the world where I need to. So I thank you for listening to my little interview with Tyler, and One thing I want you to get away from this